everybody, I'm Zenith Warrior Princess, the cutest of ghost buns, and welcome back to the Disney Debate, where we talk about Disney products, Disney films, and welcome also back to The Emperor's New Remake, where we talk about the live-action remakes of Disney films. And today we have something interesting for you. But before we get into that, how's it going, Kat?
Oh, this is the night, it's a beautiful night, and we call it Recording Disney. I'm doing fantastic, honestly. I've been looking forward to talking about this all week.
And Mr. Doug?
The Lady and the Tramp. Yes, Lady and the Tramp. One is a house dog, the other runs rampant. They'll fall in love today as they eat some spaghetti. Their lady, and the tramp, 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 tramp. What a dog!
Narf!
Narf.
I'm doing well.
He's a Doug, but we love him. He's a Doug. He might be bald. I've never actually seen what's under his hair, but I believe it is a wig.
She's a Zen, and she's fatty. Breaks a new heart when she sits on it.
So, everybody, we are here to talk about the live-action remake of Lady and the Tramp. And the interesting thing about this is, after the previous two live-action remakes, I was getting a bit worried, to be honest. I was getting worried that this was all just going to be me being angry, and then this segment would, be just a lot of anger. And it's like, I don't do things to be angry. I like to enjoy things. I'm a very positive person. And I am very happy to say that the Lady and the Tramp remake is actually really good.
Yay!
So we have something good to talk about today. Before we get into that, though, I'm gonna start off with our Emperor's New Remake. What I like to do is take a look back at the original and some of the sequel material and see how things rank, see how they hold up. I rewatched Lady and the Tramp, the original, from the 1955, and I also rewatched Scamp's Adventure, which I didn't ask anyone else to do that because it's not really relevant, but we'll talk about it briefly. So, Lady and the Tramp, 1955, this was actually our 32nd episode, and I did look it up. I got it right this time because I made a mistake last time, because Dumbo was our 6th episode and not our 5th. I am bad at math, I know, but so yeah, this was our 32nd episode. So around this time we had started to really get a feel for how things were in our format, and I'm pretty sure that our assessment of Lady and the Tramp back then was pretty much my assessment today. Lady and the Tramp holds up fairly well. It's a very good movie. It doesn't have quite as many problematic elements as Dumbo. It does have the racist Siamese cats song and segment, and the fact that they, the design of the Siamese cats to be stereotypically Asian is kind of bad, and the way they talk in broken English is very bad. So that's a little bit much. I don't know if we talked so much about the stereotypes. We talked a little bit about the Italian stereotypes, and while they are stereotypes, as an Italian myself, I do see the harm in it. But at the same time, when he's just hey, dogs don't talk, he's a talking to me. I sometimes do that. My uncles and I talk like that sometimes. It just we don't always talk like that, but I find it funny. And, I think Bella Notte works in that thick Italian accent. So, it's just, this is a very classic movie. What I don't think we talked about as much was all the dogs are stereotype, and I don't think I picked up as much on this because like you have Jacques is Scottish stereotype, and then you have like the British bulldog, and then you have the Russian stereotype in the pound, and like every single dog is a stereotype, but the worst one is one that we didn't talk about. There's the Chihuahua, which is a is like extremely racist Mexican stereotype, and I'm like, whoa, yeah.
To be fair, like, I think the problem is a lot of us kind of grew up with this as kids, like, particularly with Looney Tunes, because whenever they would show an animal that was, from a certain, like, country or had, like, the ethnicity in its name, most of the time they're usually portrayed with the accent and as stereotypical. It's just, it doesn't register as much because they're animals, not humans. So I think as a kid you don't really like think about it as much, but yeah, when you look at it now, it does become blatantly obvious because it's like these dogs are from America, and yet we have
From
like,
America.
and yet yeah, because like assume these dogs like were born and raised in America, and yet they all have distinctive, very heavy accents and mannerisms of different countries. So yeah, that is stretching a bit.
So, like, with that aside, though, I think the original Lady and the Tramp really does hold up. The music, for the most part, is really good, and it really carries a lot of the film, but the story is paced really quickly. And, both this and Scamp's Adventure are about an hour and 10 minutes, minus the end credits, which is usually about 10 minutes. So it's about an hour and 10 minutes each. And it's paced really well for the original film. So you get a lot about these characters. It's really romantic. Bellanote is wonderful. He's a Tramp is a great number. There's a lot of really interesting things here that carries the film. The thing that I do want to comment on, though, is something that I didn't notice till I was an adult, is that back in the 1950s, the etymology of the word tramp was a little bit different. Because nowadays, tramp is kind of a gendered insult against women. But back then, as I looked it up, tramp is more a homeless person. It can be used for someone who's promiscuous, but it's more for someone who didn't really have a home. And that's what they're going for. But if you look at Lady and the Tramp today, you might be wondering, oh, well, that's kind of problematic a title. And it's like continuing this theme we have with Cinderella and Dumbo, where these titles, like the etymology of the word changes over time, and it's not really as okay to use it. Kat, what do you think?
No, I agree. The change in terminology does make it a little bit uncomfortable, like particularly when in regards to the song "He's a Tramp," because the context and whatnot, especially in the original where he's established to be a womanizer, so that kind of doesn't help matters. But I mean, I don't know. I guess because everybody basically grew up with Lady and Tramp, like no one really bats an eye as much anymore. They just assume that's his name. And like you said, there is that association, like not just the slander against women, but also the association with like comedic homeless people. Like I had this distant relative. She actually had like a figurine collection. I believe it was called the Lovable Tramp. He was basically this homeless guy in clown makeup, and she had like at least 20 figures of him like in goofy positions, sort of like tumbling and doing stuff like a clown and all that. So it's not an entirely bad association, but I can understand how that would bode in today's society.
And Mr. Doog.
Honestly, it was not a thing that really crossed my mind ever. I mean, yeah, definitely the homeless aspect of it did, but I never really thought of it as really being derogatory. I mean, obviously now, yeah, it has a lot of bad looks, and I mean, honestly, that is this movie in a nutshell. It's like there's a lot of things we didn't really even think about as being offensive until this point, and even then we kind of forget about them.
I just think it's interesting to me because Tramp didn't have a name. He goes, like, in the original, he goes by a bunch of different names. And in Italian, he's Butch, or he's Pooch, or, you know,
Butch.
some different name. Butch or Pooch, or, like,
It's
he
Butch.
has a bunch of different. Well, yeah, but he says in the movie that he has a bunch of different names. So
Right, it
sometimes
depends
he's
on the
Pooch.
family he goes to.
Yeah, so
Complete
it's
with
like
thick accent of whatever name he's going by.
Yeah, so it's like he has a bunch of different names, but they eventually settle on Tramp because that's what he's known by. And in the sequel, he's still known as Tramp, and it's like it makes sense in context, but like if you think about it for a second, it's just like, huh.
Well, actually, you want to know something rather interesting? Lady and Tramp
Sure.
never actually address each other by name. Because think about it, like, Lady at the most will refer to him as the Tramp, like what everyone else does, but never actually outright calls him Tramp until the sequel. And it's the same thing with Lady. Like, Tramp doesn't even call her by her name Lady at all throughout the film. He calls her Pidge. So, you know, I found it rather interesting in that regard that they're both known by, like, they're given names, but they don't actually use said names for each other. And
Yeah, that is kind of funny. We have this weird, like, thing with a lot of these older Disney films where they have these names that aren't their actual names.
like, case in point, Dumbo. Case in point,
Dumbo,
Cinderella. Let's just keep the ball rolling on this.
Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah.
Actually,
Well, to be fair-
Welcome to the Emperor's New Remake, where none of the names are actually what they're supposed to be.
the names don't matter, and everything's made up.
So, that's the original Lady and the Tramp. I think it's a classic. It has some problematic elements, not as much as Dumbo, because I think a lot of the stereotypes are in good fun, except for the Siamese cats. A little bit the Italian, but I think a lot of it is in good fun. Because unlike in Pinocchio, where they have the Armenian stereotype for the guy who tries to profiteer off of Pinocchio, he was very much a harmful stereotype. Maybe Romani?
Oh, you mean Stromboli?
Yeah, Stromboli.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, I think he's supposed to be like an Italian, like Romani type, but yeah, he is vilified and he does kind of look the part, so I can definitely see the harmful stereotype there. With Joe and Tony, it's like, yeah, it's there, but they're just like such fun characters, you kind of just ignore it. Plus, again, like you, I'm also Italian. I've grown up with people like this. Heck, I'll take it a step further. I have relatives who are Italians from Jersey City. Now that is a stereotype right there. So
yeah, like the Guido stereotype, like, cause I mean, I get comparisons to like people from like Guido, Jersey Shore all the time with my family. So it's like, you know, there's a difference between harmful and just fun, and I'm just like, you know, he's talking to me. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, because honestly, they have the best scenes in like the movie, because you know they are the reason why the best scene in the movie happens. And you just like that these guys, you know, just go along with the fact that, you know, they can apparently communicate with these dogs and just insist on giving them a romantic evening, even if they don't know they'll fully appreciate it or not.
The only thing that I could draw like harmful stereotype is the design of them. Because the dogs, at least you could point to and say, well, it's just the voice. With them, they have the big teeth and they're larger, and so maybe you could say that it's a little bit harmful in that regard. But then again, I've had uncles who have a more thick figure. It's just the way we run. It's part of our genetics. So,
No, I have relatives that could pass for like characters in The Sopranos. So yeah, I can totally see that. Trust me, there are way worse stereotypes.
So overall, like, the worst thing in the film is the Siamese cats, and those were the big things that need to be taken out. Let's briefly talk about Scamp's adventure. I don't want to dwell on this too much. There's a couple things that I want to say. Tony and his waiter are gay in this movie. I have to, like, basically when they have Angel and Scamp together, they're hugging each other. And I'm just gonna say it right now, the reason that they can talk to dogs is because they're gay. I'm just saying it right now.
That's something gay people can do.
I can talk to cats, so I mean, that we just interpret body language better.
I mean, I know gay people have a quota when it comes to amassing cute animals, but I didn't think they could actually talk to them.
Look, just because they have 3 cats means that I can talk to them. It's a fact.
I've had 3 cats in my lifetime at the same time. And I could maybe guess what they were saying, but I don't think that gave me power.
Yeah, but you're not gay, are you?
I could learn.
Oh, I see how it is.
I kid.
I'm joking, but it was just
I'm not
something
gay,
funny.
But I'll learn.
That was just something funny I noticed while watching the film. Scamp's adventure still is the same. It starts off kind of sucky, but it's really held up by the musical numbers. It is a lot of fun in terms of, like, you have Junkyard Rag and World Without Fences. You have these really actually, like, somewhat modern Disney songs. The characterization's a little bit annoying, and the plot is a little bit annoying, but it's held together by some really solid stuff, and I think it was entertaining far more than Cinderella 2. It's not quite as good as, like, Bambi 2, but it's a decent sequel, and I had a lot of fun with it. But the only thing I really gleaned from that is Wild Dog. Also, even though it's taking place in the same continuity, Tramp is just like, we have to be hard on him. We have to be hard on our boy because he has to have discipline. And I'm just like, are you the same person?
Honestly, this is just like Little Mermaid 2. Which, again, you see the parent becoming the hypocrite in this matter, in which case Ariel is forbidding her daughter from going out into the ocean alone. So, yeah, it's the same thing. Tramp was brought up on the streets, and he suddenly doesn't want his son being on the streets. It's like, hypocrisy much?
Yeah, so it's a little bit annoying in that regard, but I do enjoy, like, what they're bringing to the table here. First of all, you have Jeff Bennett, who's doing a Don Knotts impersonation, and it's a lot of fun. Honestly, I kind of mistook him from Don Knotts for a minute, and then I looked it up. I'm like, oh, okay. But basically, he's playing Tramp and Don Knotts as the dog catcher the entire time. So that's pretty fun.
Well, I'm pretty certain Don Knotts was dead by that point.
No, I don't think he was yet.
Rest in peace.
No, I don't think he was yet. I think Don Knotts died, like, in the last 15 years, I want to say.
He died in 2006.
I think he would have still been alive when Scamp's Adventure came out.
And the other notable thing is that you have Bill Fagerbach, who is Patrick Starr as one of the other dogs, and the villain dog is played by the guy in The Usual Suspects.
Yeah, yeah, that always amuses me, because I'm like, was this guy that desperate for a paycheck that he decided to do a voice in a Disney, like, direct-to-video sequel? Really?
So Don Knotts, Dave Kujan, and Patrick Starr are dogs. Why are you looking at me like that?
Okay, you're right, Doug. This movie came out in 2001, so Don Knotts theoretically could have voiced it. I feel like they must have approached him, but he did refuse to do it, so that's why they had to get the impersonator.
It's pretty good impersonation, I gotta say, because I didn't notice. Like, you can tell if you listen closely. But I was just like, as soon as the film started, I'm like, oh man, there's too many ostriches. The brochure only said there'd be some ostriches.
Also,
This
a
is a
terrible
terrible
film.
vacation.
Well, I think they said it's supposed to be based off of his character in the Andy Griffith Show, Barney Fife.
Barney Fife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, pretty damn good impersonation. And it's funny, too, considering, Don Knotts is technically a Disney legend, because, trust me, we will get to his stuff eventually later on, because there are a lot of Disney films with Don Knotts in it.
He's like the Arliss of that generation, and we're gonna get to that, and it's gonna be fun time.
Oh, Lord.
But yeah, so Lady and the Tramp 2 Scamp's Adventure is fun, if only because, like, the music, the side characters, you got a lot of this stuff going on. Not the best Disney sequel, not as good as the original, but not bad. But it's notable because it vilifies the dog catcher, and that kind of carries on into this film. So now let's talk about Lady and the Tramp, the live-action remake, which is surprisingly very good. Kat, before we get into our thoughts, what were your initial thoughts going into this film?
Well, this was one of the first films released directly onto Disney Plus when it premiered. So, needless to say, I was a bit hesitant and skeptical going in, because to me, anything that, would go straight to streaming means that it doesn't have theater potential, meaning it probably wasn't going to be that good. And considering our history with live action Disney stuff up to that point, I was even more nervous, because, like, we've all seen Cats and Dogs. We've seen how bad the CGI was on those animals. And I was kind of expecting the same thing with this movie as well. So, naturally, when it premiered, I went into this basically expecting it to be bad and not really, like, expecting anything. Like, maybe that it would at least be, like, faithful to the movie, but even then I was, like, still, I don't know. But yeah, once we watched it though, like, I was very surprised. Like, I'm pretty certain if Disney Plus hadn't premiered at this point, this could have easily gone to theaters.
And Mr. Doog.
Yes, I remember well that, yeah, the live action Lady and the Tramp launching with Disney Plus. I remember that being like an advertised thing, and of course, obviously with all the other live action remakes, I didn't have the highest of hopes, but I think keeping my expectations low certainly helped. This is definitely one of the better of the Disney live action remakes. I think where a lot of the remakes falter, I think this one still at least manages to keep the whimsy of the original, especially given that, we actually have the dogs talking, as opposed to a lot of the live action remakes will kind of not have the animals talking and leave it to the humans to do all of the work, which winds up making it a terrible, terrible, no fun movie whatsoever. But at this, they give the humans a little bit more of a role, and then, you actually see their faces a lot more than you do in the animated film. But yeah, like I said, the fact that it pretty much keeps a lot of, the original movie intact, makes some tweaks here and there where, they work. Yeah, I definitely think this one did a better job of, staying true to what the original was and being a enjoyable movie.
I think my problem when I first sat down and saw this is I was burnt out on live action remakes, and there's a lot that we haven't gotten to because we're going to be talking about that later. It's like, I remember seeing the live action remake of The Jungle Book and loving it. But then there were so many bad and bland ones after that that I started to get really burnt out. And then Dumbo came out this same year. And Dumbo just tanked my enthusiasm for any live action remakes. Like, really, like, Dumbo was that bad. Dumbo, we already talked at length about Dumbo, but, like, seriously, it had this wave of effect on me. So the first time I saw this, I was like, it's okay. And that's why I remembered this as being okay. And it's colored by the perception of seeing so much bad. And Maleficent, I didn't like Maleficent at all. So when you have Maleficent and Dumbo and all of this back to back to back, I was just like, I'm sorry, I was checked out. But I went into this. My job is to come into this with an open mind, even if my perceptions were different at the time. So I rewatched the original. I liked it. I rewatched Scamp's Adventure. I thought it was pretty good. And then I watched this for the second time, and I'm like, this is actually better than I remember it. This is a very good movie. And in my opinion, it's actually better than the original. Is it as entertaining music-wise as the original? No. I think in some places the music is a little bit lacking, and we're going to talk about that. But I think it has the heart of the original, and it improves where it should improve. It still has the same whimsy. It still has the same sense of wonder. And going off what you were saying before, I was initially worried. Like, we've all seen Cats and Dogs, like you said. Like, we've seen how bad it can get with lazy cat dubbing. Or it could go the fully CGI route and be Dumbo and be terrifying. It's like there's usually this route, but from what I've seen of this film, and from what I can gather, is that it's like, it seems to me like a mesh of live action and CGI, where the dogs aren't entirely matching with their mouths, but enough so that it feels authentic. And when they're just like off screen, they slightly move their mouths, so it looks like kind of a bark, and it feels actually really natural. It never felt like it was Uncanny Valley. And this is, again, a direct-to Disney Plus film. It didn't need to go this hard, but I applaud the visuals, because we've all seen Dumbo. It's bad. This was really good. What do you think, Kat?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think it helped that they used like real actual animals in this case. Not only actual animals, these were rescue dogs. Like, they actually adopted them from
Aww.
shelters, and they trained them up until they started filming. So these are real dogs you're seeing. And granted, yes, there is CGI to make the mouths move, but they're done as the dogs are moving their heads and, like, you know, licking their mouths and whatever, so it looks natural. And they use CGI where it's necessary, you know, the parts where they have to do action stuff so that way they're not putting the animals in danger. But the way that they, you know, incorporated it into the surroundings and everything, and even just the scenes of them, you know, talking straight to the camera or whatever, it is really well done. It's never like, you know, it's never really like distracting, and it's not horrifying in any way. Like, honestly, yeah, you're right. Like, they didn't have to go this hard, but they did. And they did a fantastic job in terms of the animation. So yes, count me impressed.
Doug?
Yes, definitely. I again, yes, sometimes the CGI mouths are noticeably off and kind of creepy, but I think when you let your brain kind of just turn off and, you know, go with the flow, it works. It's not all that distracting.
Yeah, like, there are some parts that don't fully match up, and that's stuff I noticed, but I don't think it needs to 100% match. Like, it just needs to match enough to where you suspend your disbelief. And I think that's where this works, is that it really gets you invested in these characters. Now, the first major change, and something that I actually like, is Jock has been changed from a boy dog to a girl dog. And I think it allows the character to be a more fully fledged character, because In this, we actually get to see the owners of all the three main dogs. We get to see Jock's owner, we get to see Trusty's owner, and we get a lot more with Jim Deere and Darling. And I think this change actually helps to flesh out the cast and see what they're like. So with Jock, she's trying on all these different outfits as a model. With Trusty, he's just a companion dog. And it gives character not only to the dogs but to the owners, and it adds a little bit more time to the film, but it's not padding. It fleshes out the world.
Yeah, I agree. And it really helps with Jacques because, like you said, in the original, you can continue Jacques like a Scottish stereotype. Which, again, if he's like an American-born dog, like how does that make sense? Like just because he's a Scottish Terrier doesn't automatically mean he has a Scottish accent. But in this, it makes sense because you see, Jacques' owner is Scottish. Like they basically have the same accent, so you can at least see where she picked up the dialect from. So in that case, it does make sense, and I do like that. She's basically a model for her owner's artwork, which I want to buy. By the way, I love Scottish Terriers, and I would love to have those paintings she made. They were excellent. Like I could see those being like on a calendar or something.
And the humor that's derived from this, because like in the original it's a lot serious in this, but I think what really picks it up is like Trusty's giving her a lot of flack for being a model. It's like, oh, there's your dignity right there. And it's, well, first of all, it's Sam Elliott as Trusty. So you have the original Phantom Ghost Rider as Trusty, works so well. But like you have this banter between the dogs, and it's like, yeah, in the downtime you have funny stuff and the humor actually works. Um Another point that I want to touch upon, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know where the original film was set, but I think they changed the setting to what feels like New Orleans.
May I talk about
Because
this? Yeah.
go right ahead.
Yes,
Go.
I actually did want to kind of mention this in relation to the animated film, and it actually was like you said, my original thought, given that they were giving like the whole jazz motif and how the town looked, I was originally critical, thinking that this seemed like New Orleans. However, if you go back to the original 1950s movie animated, um, so this ties in a lot to Walt Disney's own personal history and the Disneyland parks, because the town is actually supposed to be modeled after where Disney grew up in Marceline, Missouri. And then as you might notice, like the town feels very much like Main Street USA from the parks, and that was again intentional because I think that was going on at the same time as they were making the parks. So yeah, there's very much of Disney's own personal history uh, influenced in this movie. Um, and then upon further thinking about it, because I think that based on where the original movie is, it's probably set in like the 1940s, 1950s, so it's a little more modern. Although they never really specifically give you a year. If I had to guess, though, um, this also has to be Missouri, given, but probably a little further east, because I believe it's along the Mississippi River, so it's probably closer to like St. Louis or something, and probably has that
Okay.
Mississippi River style architecture that you notice with New Orleans. And obviously, yeah, you see like the riverboat. So I think that is entirely plausible that this is a an older version of a Missouri town along the Mississippi River. And one thing that I noticed very quickly is that you have a lot of like horse and buggy sort of vehicles in this. And one thing that I'm wondering about in particular is that you see a trolley that is horse drawn. So I did
Huh.
not realize this was ever a thing.
Well, I do hate to kind of burst your bubble, but I did research, and this town is supposed to be in Savannah, Georgia.
Okay, now I'm angry. Now I'm angry because they hardly ever get snow there.
I know, that's what kind of like baffles me, because the aesthetic of the town is clearly different. Like, granted, I've never been to Savannah, Georgia, and especially, I don't know what it looked like back in the early 1900s, because I do believe this is even earlier than the 40s, 50s. This has to be like the 10s, 20s, because they still alternate between horse-drawn carriages and Model T cars.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely older. But yeah, from what you said, like the aesthetic of it, based on an old, like a Missouri town by like the Missouri River or something, it just, you look at that and then you think Savannah, Georgia, and it's like, are those really the same places even back then?
Now, are we
Again,
sure that that's, because I know a lot of movies these days are filmed in Georgia. Is it that it was actually set in Georgia, or did they just film it in Georgia, but it's supposed to be kind of anywhere USA?
well, everything was filmed on a soundstage. There was like
Mhm.
I don't think there was any location shooting or anything like that.
Hmm.
And I mean, they had to with all the CGI animals and everything. How can you theoretically do that in a public setting? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Um.
but from what,
That is unfortunate.
hmm but I mean, from what it says, it is supposed to take place in Savannah, Georgia. So but then again, let's just assume this is just, like you said, like America Town, USA. Like this is basically a fantasy version of whatever town this is supposed to be.
Personally, that aside, it is a little bit anachronistic, but I like it because it adds more flavor to it. Again, you get a feel like going into a Disney park from it. And, like, yeah, I got that jazzy New Orleans feel or Mississippi feel. And I think that really adds to the character of the setting because the original, you couldn't really tell where it was supposed to be. But here, it's just like, hey, this is a very diverse town. And, like, it's near the river. You have a bunch of different diversity in terms of the people living here. So it's an immigrant town. But it has more flavor to it, and it may be slightly anachronistic with the snow, but I like that it has this character to it. The town actually feels like a character, and that's something that, like, from the very beginning, yeah, I thought the music wasn't quite as good as the original, but the background, like jazz and stuff, like, I love this place. What do you think, Doug?
Well, furthermore, we get snow on both the opening and the ending on Christmas. So for that to happen in Georgia, of all places, twice in a row, you must have had some kind of weather anachronism there. But I digress.
Maybe global warming happens sooner in this universe.
But furthermore,
Space is warped and time is bendable.
furthermore, Kat has a bit of a critique regarding the overall culture of the film in how, basically there's a lot of diversity and mixed race. You have a mixed race couple as, the main couple. And for them to be in Georgia in the early 1900s,
Yeah.
I would say
It's
you're more likely to have that accepted in Missouri since it is further north.
Yeah, but Missouri was still part of the Confederate States, though, so. but that wasn't a critique. It was just like something I couldn't help but notice. And like, trust me, that stuff doesn't bother me normally.
Yeah.
Like trust me, I love Hamilton because all the parts are played by people of color. It's like that's like the whole like big draw of it. But it just seems to me because granted this is still a fantasy movie because it does feature talking dogs, but considering it's supposed to take place in like the southern part of America in the early 1900s, like it's still kind of jarring to see a majority of the cast being people of color. Like it's like on the one hand they got rid of all of the ethnic stereotypes regarding the dogs and the people and everything, and then they went the opposite direction where they made everyone incredibly diverse to the point where you're thinking like, okay, I'm gonna have to really like suspend my disbelief and assume that this just takes place in an entirely different universe or like timeline or something where racism just didn't exist. Because given like you said, given the setting and everything, like you really have to like go into the mindset of, okay, this is a timeline where the racist South doesn't exist, and let's just roll with it.
And also on
at the same time, it's very welcoming though. You raise very good points, and I'm not dismissing any of those, but I think it's nice. Like this is an ideal picture of what I would want the world to be.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I'm glad for that. Just go ahead.
I also do want to talk again in terms of the diversity, especially talking about the voiceovers. Going back to us talking about Trusty and Jock, in particular Jock, DuckTales, woo! Because it's Ashley Jensen who played Dowdy McDuck, Scrooge's mother.
So not only is Patrick Star following me everywhere, DuckTales is following us everywhere.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, and then you also have like Benedict Wong as the bulldog.
And you wouldn't be able to even recognize him because like honestly, I looked it up and I'm just like, huh.
Like when I first heard him, I kept thinking that it was John DiMaggio because it just sounds so much like him. I didn't think at all Benedict Wong. It's like, unless you see the credits, it's like, wow.
And Valkyrie is Lady.
Tessa Thompson.
And then as a doctor, you have Ken Jeong.
Of course, he would be a doctor in this.
So it's like, it's such a very diverse cast. And then Janella Monáe as Peg.
And you also have F. Murray Abraham as Tony. Oh, great. The idiot's in control.
Khonshu is singing Bella Notte, which, it's pretty fitting because he would know about knights. He knows about every knight.
To be fair, he wasn't Khonshu at this point. He was still Salieri, and Salieri rocks.
At the same time, he does transcend space and time. He knows every knight, but still. So, like, this casting, I think, is wonderful. Yeah, it doesn't really fully make sense for the time period, but screw that noise. I don't give a shit. This is good casting, because all of these characters, all of these actors do such a magnificent job in bringing them to life. I like what they do with Tramp here. They make Tramp into more of a they take out the more promiscuous bits and they focus more on him being homeless. And like there's a sequence in the film that actually legitimately made me cry where they delve into Tramp's past for once and they show that he had an owner but he was abandoned and he waited there for a day waiting for his owner to come because they got a baby and they probably couldn't afford a dog at the time. And it broke my heart, and it informs so much of the character about how he doesn't want to stick by anyone else. It's like me, myself, and I. That's it. And it does raise an issue with the "He's a Tramp" song, but for the rest of the film, like I think it does a great job of improving the Tramp character because it's not that he's promiscuous. he just doesn't trust anyone.
I mean, I like it and I don't like it. Like, you kind of have to go into this with a mindset that you're watching two completely different Tramps. Because, like, with the original, like, yeah, he was, like, like, just a street mutt or whatever, but he was, like, he liked it that way. He enjoyed having the freedom, being able to go from family to family, not being attached to anyone, and he was charming enough where he could always, like, find his way into anyone's hearts. I mean, that's why he had so many girlfriends. Like, he was just this charming, like, roundabout who, he showed up whenever he felt like it, and he did good of his own volition because he was just a nice guy like that. And yeah, he does indeed mess with people. I will reiterate, he is still very much a menace in that regard. But he's, lovable, lighthearted. He just is a guy that likes his freedom. And granted, he doesn't get much of an arc in that sense, just that he learns to settle down with one family by virtue of being with Lady. But at the same time, like, he's still a good, memorable character, though. You can't help but like him for that. This Tramp, though, like, the problem was because they had to give him a completely different arc. In this one, he's embittered by the fact that he's a street dog. Like, he claims that he prefers it, but that's only because he was hurt real badly by his previous owner. And his whole thing is learning to let people love him again, learning to accept love, and, actually trying to find a family willing to take him in. And he learns it through his interactions with Lady. And granted, like, because he's, like, kind of, embittered and kind of, like, grouchy in that regard, he does butt heads with her. But it creates a new interesting dynamic opposed to the first one where he just instantly charms her. So, like I said, I don't hate this version of Tramp. I do think he's a bit more of a jerk. But I can see what they were trying to do with his arc for this version, and I can appreciate it for it.
Doug.
Yes, I actually did want to talk about Tramp too, because yeah, as you were saying, he's so not just promiscuous, but he's just in general in the animated film, he's friendly. He loves people. Well, not so much people, but definitely he loves other dogs and other, living things. You see him, like, go up to a pet shop window and just, like, playing with the little puppies there. You see that he'll just kind of show up and just be jolly and happy, and, the world is his oyster. He'll go around just spreading joy. Whereas, yeah, like this one, he kind of just will help anybody, but reluctantly. Like, he's even telling those stray puppies that he sees, it's like, oh, the cute act will only last for so long, and then you're gone. Yeah, it's a little more rough to watch him, but again, I understand why they did that.
Yeah, like, it's a very different take. And, like, some people might not like it. I think it really works for what the story that they're trying to tell, because they wanted to streamline it a little bit. I think in the original, there's a little bit of a disconnect between the stuff with the problem with the baby and Lady and Tramp's arc, and then the stuff with the rat. And here, they give two climaxes, but it works because it showcases both stories having a build-up and a payoff for each individual thing. And I think that was needed. Whereas, like, here, we have a payoff for Tramp, and him actually going into trust, where, like, the payoff is that, they have to know whether or not he can trust Tramp to save the baby from the rat at the end of the film. And that was a big thing. And, like, there's stuff that they do with the Tramp that I think really works. The stuff with the baby, I think, works really well in this case because, like, they go through the same story beats where Lady is sent with Aunt Sarah, and thankfully they take out the racist Siamese cat song. They replace it with something that's not very good, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
It's very odd. But, like, they have the Aunt Sarah sequence, and she just doesn't like dogs. And that's, like, the whole thing. It's like, yeah, I don't know why they would have her dog sit if she doesn't like dogs, but she doesn't watch Lady or her cats and blames Lady for the destruction, and then tries to put a muzzle on Lady. and goes away. And for a large portion of the film, she thinks she's being replaced by the baby until her owners are the one who pick her up at the pound, which is it's a nice setup and payoff, and the Aunt Sarah gets what's coming to her. And I think that change actually really helps the flow of the film because we have the stuff with Lady at the same time the stuff with Tramp, and it kind of coalesces where Tramp's like, well, I hate to break it to you, but they might have abandoned you, and then he finds out, oh, they didn't. So it's like there's a great shift in the tone of the film that their arcs actually build together. Kat?
No, I definitely agree. It's a lot better. Plus, Lady and Tramp's arcs like intertwine with each other too. Because in the first movie, Lady didn't really have that much of an arc. Like, yeah, she had the whole, insecurities about whether or not the baby would replace her. But that gets settled instantly once the baby is born, and she doesn't really have go through anything different in the remaining film. It's like, yeah, she learns how a street dog lives, and she learns to sort of improvise a bit, but it's not like she really learned anything significant that helps her later on. If anything, she's like disgraced later on from having been out with Tramp, having been captured and put in the pound. If anything, it like solidifies her claim that she should stay home, she should be a house dog. Whereas with this one, we see that Lady's insecurities are there through a majority of the film. She's absolutely convinced that her owners abandoned her, that they chose the baby over her, and that allows Tramp to sort of feed into those fears, convinces her that she's better off staying with him, so she doesn't go through the abandonment that he did. But of course, later on, she finds out that they didn't abandon her, and that they do reprimand the person that caused her such harm and grief. And she realizes the baby's not that bad, and through that, she convinces Tramp that her fears were unfounded, and that she has a loving family, and that he could have that too if he found the right people. Like, I think the biggest change though is that the significant change is the fact that they don't fight in the finale. Because when you think about it, like, Lady kind of gets mad at Tramp for no reason. It's like, yes, she should be upset because he left her behind, albeit unintentionally. But she gets mad at him for having past girlfriends. Like, why would you get mad at someone who dated other people previously? It's like, yeah, they made it seem like he's a womanizer, but it's like, dude, he's his own person. He's allowed to date who he wants. It shouldn't matter how many people he's dated. If he likes you and he's not cheating on you, what's the issue? And they don't even resolve that. It's like she gets upset, Tramp leaves, but then the thing with the rat happens, and yeah, Tramp comes back and saves him, but it's not like they ever have a conversation after that. It's not like Lady apologizes to him or anything. It's just, let's just assume the matter just resolved itself. Whereas with the new one, they actually talk about what happened, and she's like, while she is upset, she knows that that's how he is, that he was just trying to look out for himself like he always has so he doesn't get hurt. She understands where he's coming from, and she, shows him that, her fears were unfounded, and that, things could be better if he gave love a chance. So they are on the verge of resolving that by the time the rat stuff starts happening.
And the conflict is like, hey, is he going to save her when she's trapped? Is he going to save the baby? And it's like a big thing, and I think that really works for the characters. And I like the fact that she goes out and howls at the moon, and there's a brilliant bookend with the howling scenes, and there's stuff that we didn't have in the original, but that they flesh out a little bit more to make it feel more like a full movie. Because when I first saw that this was 2 hours, I was like, oh, wow, okay. But no, the time is really well paced, and I think they do a great job of tying everything together. Doug.
So here's where I have to start nitpicking a bit. And it's going to be very weird and roundabout in the way that I do it. But I'll start off by saying I do like that Aunt Sarah is toned down and not quite as aggro as the animated film. But obviously that makes it that like she's not really so much the villain, and that the dog catcher is given a more prominent villain role in this. And Disney and their freaking dog catchers that are obsessed with the job, but we'll talk about that a little more later. Um, but one thing that does bug me about it is there are some plot points and plot holes that we get as a result of Aunt Sarah being diminished in her role and kind of being, let go earlier than she was in the animated film, because it means that some of the plot points have to happen differently now. Some of the conflict has to be changed up a bit. And they kind of drop the ball on it a little bit too. Like stuff they could have easily fixed. Like for one thing, they have Aunt Sarah take Lady to the dog the pet store to get the muzzle, and in this one, for some reason, they have the pet store owner remove her collar while he's putting the muzzle on, which winds up, because the collar was a very important reason why she was able to get out of the pound later on. Whereas in this one, the dog catcher just kind of had an interaction with Jim Deere earlier, where, he sees Lady, but it's like apparently that was enough for him to remember that, that was the same exact dog. And that's, Jim Deere and Darling know to find Lady at the pound somehow.
Yeah, you do have a point there,
Yeah.
because like having them take off the collar does not really make sense, because the dog catcher would catch the dog anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
it's
think
like you can't put the muzzle on without taking the collar off.
I think the whole point was to sort of up the stakes a bit, because that was the whole big danger of the movie, was the fact that dogs without licenses automatically went to the pound and were at risk for euthanasia. So I think that was the whole point, is to raise the stakes, as you said, because we know based on Aunt Sarah's personality and everything, she wouldn't go looking for a lady of her own volition. She might, she might just to cover her ass, but she could easily play it off as oh, I was watching your dog and she just ran away. I tried looking for her, but I couldn't find her. In this way, she kind of just, gets rid of her, because she already shown she doesn't approve of her being around the baby. So if anything, in her warped mindset, she'd see it as her doing the family a favor, getting rid of the dog. So, and like I said, it's better in this case that you actually have the Darlings show up and rescue her themselves, because it proves to her once and for all that they do love her. They will save her from whatever trouble she gets herself into. So I can understand it in that regard.
I will say, though, I love Aunt Sarah in this version, played by Yvette Nicole Brown. So you may know her as Helen Parr from Drake and Josh. And the driver in Muppets Haunted Mansion. So the Disney sitcom universe and the Nickelodeon sitcom universe are completely connected. It's confirmed. But
she's also apparently in the Marvel universe too. She was a SHIELD agent. So another one to add to the MCU. And let's not forget, she's also in Community, and she also was on Pound Puppies, which you gotta admit is ironic.
I just like her in this version, and I like how they really dial up the meat here, because when she brings her to the not the pound, to the pet shop, she's just like, oh, this one can't be trained. You didn't even watch her. They don't even have her, because she's just saying, quiet, lady, when she's barking at the cats knocking over stuff. You're not even watching her. Why aren't you downstairs? She's just upstairs. She doesn't even have an excuse in this version, where she's not watching the baby, she's just like upstairs trying to get away from the dog. And I'm like, wow. And I think she's played perfectly by Yvette Nicole Brown personally.
Here's how I actually will say, I don't think that Aunt Sarah in this is mean so much. I mean, she is mean, but she's more negligent.
Yes.
Because it's like Aunt Sarah in the original is far meaner, to the point where, Yvette Nicole Brown's version actually refers to Lady by name. The original Aunt Sarah never does. And it's like she will just do a lot of her actions without a second thought. She would rather, just have Lady completely kicked out of the house. Whereas, at least Yvette Nicole Brown understands that Lady is supposed to be here. It's just she sees her as a menace.
Mm-hmm. And like, I like the comeuppance, because like, if she can't take care of a dog, how is she supposed to take care of a baby?
Mm-hmm.
Like that, there won't be a next time.
I mean, it's hard to judge, like, if she's meaner or less mean than the original Aunt Sarah, because in this case, like, not only does she, like, treat Lady bad, she kind of treats the darlings bad, too. Like, she's always making passive-aggressive comments to her niece, like, about her weight gain and everything. And, clearly she disapproves of her husband. Like, she doesn't like that Jim's an artist or whatever it is he does in this version. Like, she definitely
a musician.
Yeah, musician. Yeah, so she does not approve of their situation and just feels like she has to insert her opinion on everything. And I mean, we've all known people like that. So
yeah, but she's
again,
more catty, whereas the original one is just authoritative.
I suppose.
Yeah.
All right. While we're on the subject of Aunt Sarah, let's talk about the cat song.
Oh boy.
Okay. I'd like, if I may, I'd like to start on this one.
Go right ahead.
So, okay. I Am Siamese is a very stereotypical song. Absolutely. It's wrong. It's, it's insensitive. It's bad. But you cannot deny it is catchy. You know the words
the chorus,
to it.
The chorus is catchy. The actual lyrics I didn't remember because it's broken English. Like, we have to get the fish and tails, and I'm like, yeah, no. But the chorus, I will give you. The chorus is very catchy.
Yes. Okay. The song they replaced it with is just so blah. Like, it's sort
it's
of
so
like
out
it's
of nowhere.
It's sort of like it has something going for it, but then they have like Lady talking over it. They have Aunt Sarah talking over it. It could be something a little better, but they clearly are so, trying to fix this, stereotypical issue that they're trying to make you forget the new thing that is in turn trying to be, less problematic. It's like, do you even know the name of the song? It's like
I don't even know like the words. Like,
No.
I know it's like some sort of like downbeat New Orleans, like kind of like jazzy
Sorta.
kind of thing.
Yeah,
but
I'm looking it up right now, and it's called "What a Shame."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to
but
look it up, otherwise I would have forgotten it completely.
And that's the thing, like, this is the one part of the film that I feel is the weak bit. And it's like, it's thankfully not that long, and the CGI and the cats are probably some of the weaker bits too, but it's just like, it's not horrible, but it's just like, it kind of comes out of nowhere and it's gone. And
Yeah. I mean, that whole
like,
scene is a catalyst for, getting Lady where
Catalyst.
Yep. It is. It's not something that you can take out of the movie, but if they're gonna show so little fucks about it, and apparently, like, Janelle Monáe had something completely different in mind when writing the new song, but I guess we'll never know what that is. Um, but honestly, it's like at that point, if you're just going to be so blah about it and trying to make us forget it, don't even have a song there. Just you know
Yeah,
just
yeah.
just have the
And
scene happen normally.
and this is the only case where I feel that way, cuz
Hmm.
like I actually think this version of Star Sweeper is better than the original. I like a lot of the jazz background music. And I think that Bella Notte is really good.
Hmm.
Konchu did a really good job. It's
Yeah,
not
that
quite
yeah.
as good, but like it's there.
Yeah, because that's the thing. It's like the original movie. There are more songs, like with the Star Sweeper and the song "Lady Sings" as she's going up to see the baby. The Christmas song that plays at the beginning. Um,
That's actually in this version
yeah, it is.
too, but it's
In
just
this one they actually feature those background songs more prominently. Yeah.
the one thing I will say is He's a Tramp is a little bit weaker. I think they did a good job with
Mhm.
Bellanote, but He's a Tramp, they changed the lyrics because it's not about him being promiscuous anymore. It's just look, Janelle Monáe is a great singer. I think she does a great job with her bits. I think it's just a little bit awkward because they changed the lyrics.
No, I definitely agree. Cause like I even tried singing along to it, like knowing how the original song goes, and it was just rough. Cause it lacked like the sultriness of Peggy Lee. It was just like, the whole context is changed to it. It's like, why is this song still the same if the context is different? Because like the original, it makes sense. There's talking about how he's a womanizer, he's a playboy, he likes to flirt with people, and it sounds like it's being sung by a jazz club singer, so it's appropriate. But in this case, like they're basically ragging on the tramp, talking about what an asshole loner he is, who would like leave them to be, impounded, just so he'd save his own skin. Like the tone and the context just doesn't work for this song. It's like you may as well just rewrote a whole different song if that's what you were going for. It's like, but no, we got to keep the same thing, even though we changed the lyrics, which kind of ruins the song in a way.
Oh, if I may,
And I get it,
I meant to bring this up earlier. I'll try to be quick on it. Um, but another thing I did want to talk about when you were talking about how Lady was upset with Tramp in the beginning in that the original movie. Um, I think there is a reason, and it's not so much that Tramp abandons her, but that it's coupled with her going through this traumatic experience of going to the pound and then learning also that Tramp is a womanizer and maybe thinks she was falling for him. Now she's wondering if he's even loyal at all. So I think there's just a lot of mixed feelings going on with Lady at the time. Not to mention she's now like a prisoner in her own home when she gets back. So like I said, there's a lot of feelings, and I think a lot of it was just maybe some misdirected anger at the tramp.
going back to the stuff with He's a Tramp, I get that it's iconic and you want to have it in there, but you have Janelle Monáe. Have her make a new song to have this stand out. And it's like, I don't hate the songs in this version. They do a far better job than some of the other remakes. I just feel like Janelle Monáe is underutilized in this role. And she's good cast in this role. It just, the song is not good for her. So it's like, I don't mind the music in this version. I think they do a really good job with what they're given. I just think two of the songs could have been picked up a little bit. Let's talk about the dog catcher. The dog catcher is he's not Don Knotts, so I don't really care. I it's this actor seems familiar, but I couldn't figure out like what he was from precisely? Did you guys recognize him, or is he like a new guy?
I honestly didn't recognize him either, and I don't think I actually looked up like if he was in anything. Hold on, just pause 1 second. I'm looking him up.
Pause.
Sorry.
Talk amongst
Yeah.
yourselves, give you a topic.
So from what I found, his name is Adrian Martinez. He has quite the repertoire. He's been in a bunch of like TV series. Like nothing I could see that's consistent quite yet. Yeah, I mean, I didn't think he was bad or anything. Just I don't know. It was kind of I don't know. Like I feel like they really had to play him up just to like make the character seem intimidating and stuff. Oh look, he was on Conan O'Brien a bunch of times. He was Sidewalk
Well, like-
Conan and Foreign Conan and Vain Derelict. He was a foreign version of Conan O'Brien. There you go.
So it's like, like, I think he does a good job with what he's given. He's not a bad actor. I think he makes the role enjoyable, but I don't think they needed to play up this role as like the dog catcher doesn't need to be this villain, because as Kat pointed out to me numerous times, they're providing a public service, and in the original movie they're not vilified because they don't want to euthanize dogs, but their job is to take dangerous animals off the street. And then in this movie they keep repeating, it's like, he's mangy, he's dangerous, he's an animal, he's dirty. Do you get that? He's mangy, he's dangerous, he's dirty. I got you the first time. And he barges his way into the home.
Yeah, I do want to talk about him for a while, as I said. I feel like one thing I'm reminded of is I believe it was Danny Pudi's character in Flora and Ulysses. It's like another one of those like somewhat almost cartoonish dog catchers who thinks they're much more important than they really are, and thus it's like they think they have authority where they don't necessarily. They're like really fear mongering. It's like, oh, this is a dangerous dog. It's like, really gotta fetch him. It's like you gotta go to the house.
Speaking of Danny Pudi, a point that we brought up in there: squirrels cannot get rabies, and then they bring up the rat, and it's like, well, I don't deal with rodents I don't deal with vermin that spread diseases. Rats cannot spread rabies. Dogs can.
Well, yes, I agree. It is very rare for a rat to actually spread rabies, but they spread far worse disease, like bubonic plague. Anyone?
True. Yeah, true. But I'm just saying, like, you know, a little bit hypocritical there.
And then I do want to address the fact that, again, you know, having Aunt Sarah be removed as the main villain does leave a plot hole, and it's an easily fixable plot hole. In like you were saying, you know, he kind of barges into the home later, but it's like, so when he brings Lady out in the pound, and he's like very, you know, no dog should have to stay in the pound, whatever. But then it's like later, much later, that he addresses that he saw Lady with Tramp earlier. And it's like it took him this long versus, you know, he could have said that while he was at the pound, you know, addressed that concern. And maybe had it brushed off, but then he goes and like hangs around the house later for the day until he finally does see Tramp. That would have, you know, been a much better fix. But no, they just have to have him randomly show up at the house, you know, when the mood calls for it.
Yeah, I do agree. That was like extremely forced, having him just show up. And I know, like you said, he made the connection with the dogs and stuff, but the fact that he didn't follow up on that sooner, like obviously they were trying to set up for the finale, because it's like, okay,
Mhm.
we don't have Aunt Sarah, we don't have her forcefully chaining Lady up in the backyard, she's free to come and go inside the house as she pleases. How are we going to play up the whole rat situation? Well, clearly we got to keep Lady out of the room somehow, so, and we got to have the dog catchers show up without, the darlings initially finding the rat first. So I guess this is the best way we do it. Just have it so that she goes nuts and they just shove her down into like the storage locker or whatever until they deal with the dog catcher.
And like I said, it's such an easy fix. They could have, kept it that way, but made that tweak that he's because he's so obsessive, he's hanging around the house outside waiting for Tramp to show up. That would have made much more sense.
Yeah, like I do agree that it is contrived, and like they could have had that scene at the pound. That actually probably would have worked better and set up for it a little bit later. So that is a weak point. But I do think the climax is really well done in this version. I like that, they don't fully knock over the crib. They don't fake kill Trusty. There's a lot of good changes in this movie. And yeah, there are some minor problems, but overall I think what they do with the plot is for the most part better. Would you agree, Kat?
Oh, definitely, for sure. Because like I said, little tweaks here and there, but they made a difference, and they still kept the rat terrifying. Because
oh yeah,
because like the rat, that was one of the things of my nightmares when I was a kid, just seeing that giant friggin' New York City style rat there, and it's the same in this. He's not as big, but he's still terrifying, especially the parts where he's like hanging on the curtain just above the baby's head. Like that's almost scared the shit out of me the first time I saw it. And I'm not someone who's afraid of rats, but I would freak out if I was there and I saw that. But yeah, that part was like the fights were still intense, and again, I'm glad the baby's like crib didn't fall over, because that always I always flinch every single time I see that in the original movie, and I'm like, please don't let that baby have brain damage. Please don't let that baby have brain damage. But in this case, she's just tilted.
Yeah, she's just tilted, and Tramp checks on her immediately, and I'm just like, yes, good. They have, in my opinion, a better sequence where like Lady immediately goes and runs after, and then you have the other dogs tracking, and Trusty's like, the Jock is just like, okay, listen to me, I believe in you, do it now, and like there's a payoff for each of the dogs, and then they adopt him right there, and it's just like, these are minor additions, but they all work together to make this into a better climax.
Oh, extremely. Especially with having Lady actually go after him instead of waiting on her owners. Like, because that's another thing I do really like with the changes with Lady, is that she talks a lot more, she's a lot more proactive, she's a lot smarter, she picks up on things a lot quicker. So I'm really glad that they did that with her in this sense, because, it really makes it that much more personal. Like, she is actively going after him, showing that she will follow him and rescue him if he needs it to, which is essential to his character arc. And
she's the reason why, like, they say, like, when she gets to him and starts like nuzzling him, they're like, well, he's not dangerous,
Exactly, because it's like in the original, like, we have no idea how them adopting Tramp really came about. It's like, okay, they thought the dog attacked their baby. Turns out he didn't, it was a rat. But how do you leap to the conclusion that, oh, the dog was stuffing the rat, I guess we should go rescue him and adopt him? That's a really big leap right there. But
the only thing that happens is they notice that, the blood on him, and they're like, oh, that's from him, fighting the rat and, doing that. That's it.
Yeah, but in this case, they know what the dog did. They see their own dog vouch for him, and they see the consequences if he does indeed go to the pound. So it's not just them, seeing that he's a good dog in need of a home, but also them wanting to save his life. That I felt was like really essential and something that was missing from the original. But the thing that I love the most, the best change, was taking out the whole thing with Trusty dying. Because that made no sense whatsoever in the original. Because, like, you have Trusty's whole thing about how he supposedly lost his sense of smell, and then finally, toward the climax, Jacques calls him out on it, and he proves him wrong by actually tracking down Tramp. And how does he get rewarded? He almost freaking dies. Like, what was the point of that? And actually, I read in the original that before they made the final changes, Trusty was gonna stay dead. Which, why would you do that? It's
Why?
it's bad enough you're showing this poor dog being crushed under a wagon's wheel, but to actually keep him dead. Like, I'm glad that Walt Disney decided to change this because he and himself admitted it was too hardcore because, like, he didn't want another Bambi's mom incident on his hand. And I completely agree because this is traumatic, especially for people who've had pets that were hit by cars. Like that,
yeah.
Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to be reminded of it. And again, it serves no purpose to the story.
It's a side character that's like in the movie for only a little bit.
It's like you fridge the side character for no reason. This should not be here. Take it out.
I also really like how this works better in this version for Tramp's character, where he says it's, he's going to end up in the pound. Like, we have much more stakes for Tramp in this, where, like, him going in to save is what led to him being, like, left out. And for me, I think that the remake does a great job of showing how Tramp's overcoming his own past issues and having him at the end deal with that. Yes, he's injured, but he gets out of it and he's rewarded. That's payoff for Tramp. And I think, honestly, this remake does a great job with a lot of things. Is there anything else you want to add, Kat?
I mean, just that I'm glad they changed that. It's like, yeah, you had, like, the whole, oh no, Tramp's dead, he's dead. Like, that wasn't the case, obviously, given that A, it's a remake, and B, you knew they wouldn't go that route with this type of movie. But, again, it was just so much better. So much better. Like, the entire, like, last third of this, for the most part, was just so much better.
Yeah. Doug?
So I did want to address a change that they made that does coincide with this, and I want to be praising of it. The fact that, like in the original movie, after the pound scene, and they rescue lady from the pound. It's
yes, I forgot about this.
You never see the other dogs again, so you assume that they are left to their fate. In this, they actually make it so that Peg and the bulldog are rescued. Like, almost a lot of the dogs from the pound are rescued and adopted, and that this is not just something to be like, oh, they lived, yay. It's like they actually make this work toward the story, towards Tramp's arc, because then he sees them out. They're talking to him about how great their life is now. They see, like, the owner bring out, bones for them. And Tramp sees this, and he actually softens on his, opinion of humans, on his opinion of having a home again. So it works toward the actual story.
And he steals Wong's bone. How dare he?
Yeah, and even the scene with the puppies getting adopted by Jock's owner was significant too, because I know the whole big thing with the original was that we see that Tramp and Lady have puppies at the end. But that's not the case in this version. Instead, the two puppies we saw at the beginning and in the pound, they get adopted by Jacques' owner, and she is actually happy about it. Because, to her, it just makes her family a little bigger. And I feel like this is significant because I think the message they wanted to, like, say about it, especially in terms of puppies, is to adopt, not breed. Because, like, I know...
Exactly.
Because, like, I know a lot of people, like the whole romantic notion of, oh, if they get a boy dog and a girl dog and they fall in love, they can have puppies together and you can raise those puppies. But it's like, that's still not a good mindset to have, because there are way too many homeless dogs that are just sitting in shelters with no homes, some of whom are in kill shelters, like who are on lists to be euthanized, and if they don't get adopted in a certain time frame, they're put to death, no matter like their health issues or whatever. So yeah, I think it's really important to show that, yeah, if you're gonna get a puppy, get one in need, get one from a shelter, like from any sort of facility that isn't, that isn't like a breeder's facility, like that isn't like a puppy mill or anything, not even a pet shop, like, adopt in like the legit way and give a dog in need of a home an actual home.
And I think that's a great message. Like, I really like how when they, the pound scene is a lot less miserable in this one. Yeah, we see the one-way door, but like we see that like they're saying, "Oh, we're not adoptable," but then later it's like, turns out we're adoptable, and it's so great. And I love one of my favorite lines of this movie is like, "Some of us are criminals." Allegedly. It's like there's some really great moments in this movie, and having like the message of adopting. It's like, adopt, don't shop. All of my cats are adopted. Obviously I got Chiaki from Kat, so adopted there, and Kana is adopted from Crimson. So I adopted cats in need. They would have gone on the streets, and I'm sorry, my poor babies. I need them.
Yeah, I mean, I unfortunately, like, a lot of my pets came from breeders, and you can kind of tell because a lot of them ended up having either behavioral issues or, like, significant illnesses, and you really don't want to bestow that upon an animal. Like, that's just not fair. It's like you want this purebred, but you don't care about the genetic defects that come with it. Like, that's not right. Like, just get yourself a little mutt. It's like, who cares if they don't look aesthetically like the breed? I mean, it's about personality. You're getting a pet to have a companion, to have something to love, not to just show off. I mean, unless you are like actively breeding dogs for a purpose, like putting them in shows or for hunting or whatever, like, there's really no need to like go for a specific breed. Just, go for whatever dog you actually vibe with, whatever, a pet you can actually connect with, who is fitting to your personality and your lifestyle.
Exactly. Like, look, Kana is a little gremlin, and she's my little gremlin, and she's my little pillow, and she loves hugging me. And Chiaki is very, very shy, but when I'm sitting there, she watches Disney movies with me, and she'll go on my chest and she'll start purring. It's just like, yeah, every cat and every pet has quirks, but they're yours. So like, adopt them.
My family has a long line of cats that I believe all of them except for one have been adopted from a shelter, but they've all been adopted. Especially our cat Peppermint, who we actually got from Judy Schmidt, or as movie folk might know her, Lee Meredith from the original producers movie. She was Ula, the Swedish secretary. And she was going to a blessing of the animals at my dad's church, and she brought a box of kittens, and among them was what we would later adopt as our cat Peppermint.
Peppermint.
Yep.
Yeah, I miss Peppermint. She lived a good long time,
Very
though.
long life, yep.
Was she 18? Close
Yep.
to 20?
18, yep.
Yep. I always said she'd be immortal and live forever. And in a way she still does, because I see her in every gray cat I come across. And we still don't have those royalty checks, man.
Yeah.
What the hell, Peppermint?
Peppermint lives on in the Disney debate. With that being said, I think it's time for our final thoughts. Kat, what are your final thoughts of the movie?
As I said, I definitely think this is among the better of the Disney live-action adaptations. It's like, yes, it has its issues here and there. You can argue that some of the whimsy or some of, like, the memorability might have been sucked out because they were trying to make it, like, politically correct or PG or whatever, but I really don't see that much of it, like, at least not where it matters the most. I like what they did with the characters. I like this new take on Lady and the Tramp. I love the voice actors. I love the whole atmosphere of everything. All of the references to the original are mostly there. Like, they went through great care to make sure that they honored the parts that were necessary. In fact, they actually animated the whole spaghetti kiss scene per scene, so it was exactly like the original. That is how determined they were to make this as true to the original as possible. Like, there's so much care, and just the fact that all these dogs that you see portrayed in this movie were adopted because they were in this movie just shows that it was also useful in that sense. It gave animals a good home, and it got its message across about adopting. So if anything, it may not be it may not be the best Disney adaptation, but to me, it's the most significant.
Doug.
Yes. Obviously, like we were all a little fatigued over, all these live action Disney remakes that had just been either just really bad or just barely passable. This one, though, was quite the breath of fresh air. It's not necessary, but at least a lot of the good that they did and a lot of the work that they put in definitely helps to distract from, any of the problems that it has. So yeah, this was definitely welcome in terms of the remakes. It was a surprise, and I definitely recommend watching it.
I would definitely agree with that. I think that this is probably one of the better Disney live action remakes, and it's more than just okay. This is good. This is really good. I wouldn't call it great. There are minor problems. There are things that really do hold it back a little bit, but of the live action remakes, like this is really good. This is up there. And it did a lot good. I think there's a lot of love and heart and effort put into this film. And it could have just been a cash grab, like so many others. And we have stuff coming up that we're going to be talking about that was clearly either a cash grab or they clearly didn't care or whatever the hell was up with Cruella. But,
we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. But, like, there's a lot that could have happened, but I think this is a great film. How I would rank this, I think this is better than the original. I would put this just above the original. Original's just below it. The original has some better points, but overall this is better. And then Scamp's Adventure at the bottom. Not that it's bad, it's just the other two are a little bit better. That is the live action remake of Lady and the Tramp, yet another Emperor's New remake out of the way. That's 3 down, many to go. With that being said, the next thing that we're talking about, I'm gonna say for right now, because I know you two are moving and I know there's a lot of hectic. For right now, what I'm saying the next one is gonna be Hocus Pocus 2 for our Halloween episode. Just to give you guys some time. If it doesn't happen first, it doesn't happen. But at the very least, that's what we're planning. Hocus Pocus 2 will be next for Halloween. And then Cruella. We're going to dive into that crazy mess. That is a hot
dive
mess right
into.
But with that being said, we might record Cruella first. Who knows? But, I want to give them time to settle in. And Hocus Pocus 2 actually comes out in September. So I think that'll be a good lead-in for us. In any case, I am Zenith, warrior princess, the cutest of buns.
I'm Kat Macberrie.
I'm Doug Macberrie.
And remember, adopt, don't shop. Get all the cats, adopt them. And,
Zenith, you have enough cats.
I need 5 more cats. And a bunny.
Make sure you adopt, otherwise we're going to subject you to endless loops of Sarah McLachlan's SPCA commercial.
In the arms.
No! That's it. I'm quitting.
And just remember, folks, there are some good live action Disney remakes. They aren't all bad. Just most of them.
But we'll get to that.
Have a good one, everybody.
The Lady and the Tramp. Yes, Lady and the Tramp. One is a house dog, the other runs rampant. They'll fall in love today while they eat some spaghetti. They're Lady and the Tramp, 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 tramp. What a dog.